Hey guys, listen, I think this video is going to be very helpful for a lot of folks, especially the beginners out there. And the thing is, I want you to know it's going to tie into one of my best videos I've ever put out called Flight Numbers Cheat Code. And I'm going to put a link here, I can't ever remember which corner, that you can go to. Pause this one. I would recommend going and watching that one first because it's really going to help you understand how to look at those last two numbers, turn and fade, on the flight code. And I'm also going to talk about kind of the cheat code I use is called the click system to understand what the disc is wanting to do. Now I'm going to talk about this here, and this video really you could watch just this and not worry about that if you've got too much stuff going on or you just can't be bothered. This one will deal with it some, but to really establish a base, I would suggest going and watching that one. But you're free to do whatever you want. I'm here to help the best way I can. And I think this system is really helpful for a lot of people. It's helpful for me and my knuckleheaded self, so I like it a lot. Now, when I did it a year and a half ago, I used 6 discs from MVP and Axiom, all their mid-ranges. Well, I've added 2 more, so I've got the Detour and the Paradox added in. So we're going to take these to the field, and then I'm going to put it to the test by just getting out there and throwing some of these shots. So hopefully you'll come along with me, and we'll learn a little bit together right after the intro. Okay, so I've got the 8 mid-ranges that MVP and Axiom have out that you can choose from currently. But so what I've got here is a stack rated from the most flippy, the ones that will turn over the most, to the least flippy, or the most beefy, the most overstable. And so I've got the Paradox, which is a -4 turn, I believe. Then we have the Uplink, which is a -3 turn. Then the new Detour, which is a -2 turn. And then we've got the Hex, which is pretty much a straight flyer. And then you've got the Matrix, and I've got this one in the neutron plastic, and then the Reactor in the neutron plastic. And they kind of go back and forth as far as their stability. They tend to be a little bit more stable. And then you've got pretty beefy Pyro, and then finally super beef Deflector. Okay, now I've intentionally set up with this line on the field to help you gauge an idea of the straightness of the disc. So now, ideally, if I throw these all right, all 8 of them, it should almost be a gradient starting from the Paradox all the way to the right and the Deflector all the way to the left. Let's see how it works out. So the Paradox should be the most flippy. I'm going to try to throw these flat for this first one. Let's see how we do. And it just wants to cruise on back to the right. So then if you want just a little less flip or turn than the Paradox, Uplink would be your choice. And this happens to be one of my favorite discs. So see, it's a little flatter. It still turns, but it's holding it a little longer. It's not quite burning over quite as much. And now the Detour. See how it's turning, but it's still fighting back a little bit more. Now we're into the world of the Hex. And to be honest, I had a bunch of Hex. I gave my Hexes away to a friend, and so I've only got one. This may be a little beat up, but that's actually good because this should be a nice straight flyer. Yep, I put it just a slightly Anheuser. It flipped up a little, but stayed pretty much straight. So now the Reactor and the Matrix are both kind of, I think the Matrix gets less love than the Reactor, but they're both great discs. So I'm going to start with the Matrix. I threw it with a little bit of a hyzer, and so it started out even, starting a little bit more. I needed that a little bit flatter, but you can see how it never left that line. All right, now the Reactor. I threw that a little flatter, so you see it's holding it, and then it's just gonna have a nice, reliable fade at the end. Now the Pyro should be even more stable than that. I'm probably, if I throw it right, it's probably going near the soccer goal over there. Yep. I threw it pretty flat, but you can see right as it released a little bit of hyzer, and it's just gonna fight even farther to go over to the left. And now the deflector, it's a 4 fade, so it just really wants to crash back this way. So you're really gonna get reliable crash to the left, but you're not gonna get as much distance. I threw that pretty flat, and you see how it just went out, and they just immediately started dumping to the left. Okay, so now here's the results of my throws. And to be honest, the paradox, it hit and cut rolled back over here. It was landing over by this net, but because it was still cutting on such a hard angle, it just hit the ground and rolled over there. Otherwise, we had the paradox, then we would have had the uplink, then the detour, the hex, the matrix, the reactor, the pyro, and the deflector. The nice thing is you've got a wide gamut of discs that you can choose from, and then you can season up those discs to fill in any gaps that you might want. Okay, so now I'm gonna throw forehands, but you could extrapolate out, if you don't watch anymore, you could have stopped and understood how the discs are flying and just flip it for a forehand, or if you're a lefty player. Remember, whatever side of the body you're on throwing, that's the side the disc is naturally gonna wanna fade. So now the deflector is gonna naturally wanna fade hard to the right. But when I get to the paradox, when I throw it, it's gonna wanna fight that because of the turn, and it's gonna wanna go to the left. So everything just flips. As soon as you flip the side of the body that you're throwing on, all the parameters flip-flop. The other thing to keep in mind is, once you get the disc, you're not limited to just the flat release. You can now do anhyzer, you can manipulate the disc to do more. Once you know what the disc wants to do, you now can shape your shots. So we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. All right, flat with the deflector. And it's just going to dump over and skip. All right, next up, the pyro. Should carry a little bit farther down before it dumps off. Well, I drug it into the ground, but you can still see what it wanted to do. It just was this high off the ground instead of floating up here. It just came out, and then that stability took over, and it just turned the corner. Let's see if we can get one of these up in the air. Here's the matrix. Hope you saw I got a little bit turned to the left, and then it faded back to the right at the end. Full disclosure, my forehands, I tend to roll over a little more, so I am not the best forehand example. I have a serviceable forehand, but I don't have a great forehand. So keep that in mind when you're watching these throws. All right, this should be very similar. A little bit of a, oh, so I think that reactor is a little bit less stable than the matrix. And that's what you gotta do. You gotta come out and you gotta test it. You gotta throw it. Because that one actually rode a little bit more left before it dropped back to the right. All right, now the hex should be my straight flyer. But because of my tendency, it's probably gonna roll to the left a little more than I want. Yeah, you can see it tried. I tried to make sure I threw it as out as I could to keep it flat and straight, and so it just rode up, pulled a little bit to the left, and then just finished right down the middle. Now it's time for the detour. All right, so now we're starting to get where the disc is gonna, on its own, want to roll over to the left. Yep. You really need to throw these with some hyzer, and so they're just going to burn out. It really comes down to this showing how dramatically they burn over. The uplink should be even worse. Yes. And I'm expecting a good forehand roll out of this one. It's just going to burn over and start rolling. There it goes. But hey, that helps you know. I mean, a lot of times I test discs out by throwing forehands because I know my proclivities for how I throw them, and I want to see how they're going to react to my little bit of off-axis torque and all that. That kind of almost tells me the characteristics sometimes better than a smooth backhand. Okay, so now we understand the base characteristics, the base flight of these discs if you throw them flat. The paradoxes want to flip pretty hard to the right if you're throwing right-handed backhand, all the way to the deflector that's going to just crash hard to the left. Well, how does that help us when we're trying to manipulate in shot shape? Make sure to check out my video on shot shaping. But what that now means, if I understand how flippy this is, I can counteract that and do what's called a hyzer flip. So now what I'm gonna do is this is a -4, so what that means if I throw it, it's gonna wanna do like this, like 4 ticks. So I'm gonna try to release it 4 ticks down to counteract it. So hopefully I'm gonna get this just to pop up and fly straight for a good portion of this. I'm gonna try to throw it in the goal, but this is more just to see the flight. I'm gonna be able to counteract the flippiness and hopefully get a nice flight out of this by just adjusting my release so that I counteract that flip up. Right in the goal. Did you see that? I dropped it, hopefully it was the right angle. I released here, it went out and popped up. That -4 carried it from here to here, and then it was like, oh, I like this, and just cruised on right into the goal. Now the deflector is the extreme opposite side. So this is a +4 that it wants to crash here. So now I've got to throw it here. And this is kind of one of my weak areas, that I tend to get the nose up and I don't get the right angle. And so what happens is I'll end up throwing, and instead of a 4, I'm throwing about a 2 with the nose up. And so what it does, it comes out here, rises up the hill, and just So for me to do this right, I'm gonna need to throw it on a 4 angle, but also with the right direction, the right attitude and altitude so that it's going towards the goal. Because if I get it here, but I get the nose up and it's traveling up the hill, anytime it climbs the hill, it's got to come back down the hill and it's going to drop off hard back to the left. So I need to really get this over. You might want to turn away. This might not be pretty. Oh, that was pretty good, pretty close. It looked like I thought I had it, but you could see how much it just fought out of it. That 4 is just taking it back that way. Now there is a little bit of a tailwind that's making these a little more stable. So take that in consideration. All right, let's do a medium one. Now I'm gonna do a neutron reactor. So I'm gonna put it about here, but I gotta once again get it on that angle right there. You see it's fighting, it's coming back, coming back, coming back, coming back, boom, into the goal. That's what we want. I know that it's gonna wanna be fighting, and so it's just carrying along, it's fighting, coming back, and it's straightening out, and it's just cruising down the middle. All right, so the wind's picked up a little, so that's gonna make the tailwind's gonna make these a little more stable, but I'm gonna go ahead and try this. So what I'm gonna do here is, because I know this is -2, so I should throw it here. But with this tailwind, it's gonna make it more like a -1. So I'm gonna throw it a little bit flatter to counteract that tailwind, but hopefully I'm gonna put it on the right angle so it's just gonna pop up and cruise right to the goal. Little low, but right to the goal. All right, now the key with the hex is you gotta throw it nice and straight if you're gonna go for a straight shot. It's one of the toughest ones to get that perfect timing, to get it just right there. That's why the hyzer is a much more reliable shot to do, because there's physics, there's all kinds of stuff with that. But so to get a perfectly straight shot, you really gotta be on target. See if I can do it. Yep, that wind is sitting on them a little bit, but not bad. So the Pyro is a 2 fade, I think a 2.5 fade. So I'm gonna need to put it about an angle like that. Oh, that may go over the top, but it's in the middle. Yep, just right over the top. I got a little nose up, but you could see the flight taking that stability and first sending it this way and then fighting back to the middle. All right, let's do the matrix. sorry. Boom, right in the middle. So knowing what the disc wants to do informs what angle I'm releasing these discs on. The uplink is a -3. So it's gonna go 1, 2, 3. It's gonna wanna be about here. So I need to counteract by throwing about here. With the tailwind, probably about here. Okay, first of all, I can't believe they all worked in one shot. I didn't cut, I didn't edit. Those were all the shots, all in a row, because I figured out what the flights of those discs were. But you can do that too. If you kind of know what the discs want to do, you can already pre-plan and make shots like that. I hope that helps, and I do hope to see you out on the course.